Good evening, everyone. Well, after having spent a week talking about analog radios, I decided to go out and order what's essentially the cheapest analog radio on the market, which is the Tecsun R909. I paid less than $20 US for this from AliExpress, and it came quite quickly from the seller, so they're obviously out there. I'll probably do a few videos on this radio because there are a few things I'd like to do with it. This is obviously a very inexpensive radio, and it would be interesting to compare it with, probably, it doesn't even fit, the Tecsun R9700DX, which is a much more complex analog radio. It would also be interesting to compare this relatively simple analog radio with one from the past, right? And I would probably consider this a Grundig Traveler 2, which I've talked about here before, fairly similar. Interestingly enough, it has more or less the same bands, right? So 49, here, I'll slide it up, 49 meters, 49 meters, 41 meters, 41 meters, 31 meters, 25 meters, and this one has 19, and the R909 also picks up 16 and 13 meter bands as well, which, assuming this is a radio aimed more to the European and perhaps North American market, the higher bands would be presumably of more use in Asia, which is presumably where this one was designed for. Since I ordered it from AliExpress, I got a Chinese market model with Chinese instructions, which is fine because we don't really need those anyway, although I'm sure they would make sense with Google if one wanted to do that. The other radio you could compare this to is, what about a cheap phony analog radio, like a digital radio with an analog tuner? And here I would use the D328 because that's the one I've got of that type. You've seen this before. This has similar bands. It's got a little bit more extension at the base, but it's got similar band coverage. These I think are pretty comparable. Obviously this does a lot more in the sense that it's got an MP3 player in it, and I guess that's all it's got that's more, which I don't have any use for an MP3 player, and this one has a rechargeable battery and a stand. So does the Grundig. So does the big Tecsun. But is Tecsun going on a war against stands? Because there's none here. Can't complain at this price point. This also uses AA batteries, and this one is in a kind of army green with this sort of bright green accents. It's actually, it's much nicer in person than it is in pictures. This could have been gray. That would have been nice, maybe light gray or white, but it's all reasonably sensible, and I kind of like the green. And it's a world receiver. Well, I guess it is. However, I'm not going to be making any of those comparisons tonight. Let's just look at this thing on its own merits. And then I'll make some other videos looking at, probably one looking at the other two analog receivers, and then one comparing it to the XH data. So what I'll do is I will connect this up to my MLA 30 plus antenna, but I forgot to take the clip out. So is it in my drawer over here? Yes, it is. So here's the clip that we would need to attach this to the antenna, because this doesn't have an antenna in. But I will show you what it does have. It has 3 volts in. I don't believe it charges anything. It's center negative. Keep that in mind. I can't imagine many scenarios where you would use that, but it's there. It's got a phono jack, which is not stereo in FM, but sounds pretty good. Actually, the noise floor on this thing is pretty impressive. It's got a band selector switch on the top, medium wave, and then 7 shortwave bands. FM and medium wave is selected on the front with 2 clicky buttons. So it has transistorized switching between those two, and it always starts in FM mode when you turn it on. On this side, we've got the tuning dial, and that's it. Oh, and a distance and local switch, which is surprisingly useful on this radio. I have not tried it with the antenna, so we'll do that in a moment. On FM, here in Toronto, it's very helpful to put it in local because it overloads on FM. Here where I am in the West End, Toronto, with the CN Tower. Let me think, right there. So at least some of the stations are coming in very strongly right here, as I've mentioned before. I did notice some breakthrough on the 16-meter band when I tried it earlier with the built-in antenna. I didn't notice any FM breakthrough on any of the other bands. I'm just showing that an analog radio isn't entirely immune from that either. And I think that's all there is to say about this. So let's put the antenna on and see how it goes. It's 21:36 Eastern Daylight Time here in Toronto, which is, oh, it's over here, which is 1:36 UMT. So power is on the volume control. And as you'll see, it starts in FM every time. Press the button, switch to medium wave, short wave, and we'll start on band 1. I'm not really going to try medium wave on this tonight. It seems fine. And I'm very curious as to whether it overloads with the external antenna, and it appears to. So let's turn it down. Well, let's, really start at the bottom of the band.
Bring some sanity. I just randomly opened my Bible to Psalm 103.
With the financial situation in the banks, tightening of credit.
Father and familia Casanova from the current Martin municipality.
Japón 0 carreras, 5 hits, 1 horror. Los japoneses han negociado 4 boletos en este partido.
I don't think it's very accurate. I think the dial is reading low.
De la República de San Marino, la señora María Luisa Berti y el señor Manuel Chavata, quienes a continuación se han reunido con su eminencia el capitán.
Useful tuning light. Most of them aren't very useful.
Un espacio dedicado a la
So, I mean, my feeling is we've got a lot of interference tonight, it sounds like. But there's a lot out there, so signals are fairly strong. It's pulling them in. It seems to be reasonably selective. The dial is not, I believe, very accurate in terms of this calibration. Because we can pick those out, right? These stations out, so the selectivity is not too bad.
Why would you, right? And also just people are stressed out.
We might be hearing some breakthrough in here. Okay, so let's go over to the next band. Let's go to the 41 meter band. Let's have a poke through that. We'll go down to the bottom. I will say this little tuning dial is like, it's not super smooth, but it will probably get a little better as it wears in. But it's, despite being very small and looks finicky, is actually fairly pleasant to tune. Not as good as the Grundig, which is kind of super smooth. It's really very good. But this is not really not significantly worse than the Tecsun 9700DX, really, which is not a super pleasant radio to tune, to be honest. I wouldn't expect a ton of stuff here, but there should be something.
Justamente lo que querían los japoneses.
So this week may be historic.
When I come, someday I got to come down to the end of my journey. To the end, I've got to look at the world of my journey.
This is coming in from Florida. This was strong enough that I could get it with the antenna, the built-in antenna in a window previously. Okay, not too bad. Nothing surprising. It works about the way you would expect it to. We'll go down the 31 meter band. Can we get the time signal?
A diferencia de las vecinas, Tumbek se limita a negar los cumplidos diciendo, "저 어제 잠."
Él dice, nos han venido al Parlamento Europeo.
I mean, you don't get the feel of empty bands, right? There's lots there to listen to with this. All right, let's go up one more band. Let's go up to the 25 meter. We're starting to get into what's going to be quiet at this time of night. That sounds like it might be from farther away. I'm just waking up the computer here to see if I can figure out what that is. Alright, here we go. I'm guessing this is Radio Habana from Cuba. That's the most likely It's at 11,670. That looks about right. Okay. Well, what do we know about this now? It performs really about as you'd expect. It's reasonably effective, analog, inexpensive shortwave radio, right? There's not much to say about it in that regard. It's got the same kind of, you're getting in the same kind of stuff that you would expect to get in with any similar radio. So, there's not going to be any DXing really on here compared to, I don't actually, compared to something like the Tecsun PL330, for example, a modern radio is going to give you much more, it's going to be much more responsive. But compared to this, I don't know, that's going to be a much more interesting comparison. So that's what I think I'm going to do next. I'm probably not going to do it tonight, but maybe I will. We'll see. And put this radio through its paces a little bit more. But, for the price I paid, for what it is, it's pretty impressive. And I will say, I thought its FM performance was really very good, and medium wave, well, I didn't really try very much, but seemed totally adequate for local medium wave use. Really, the size of the ferrite inside here is going to be the limiting factor there. But it appears to be reasonably well designed. It's pleasant enough to use, and I'm glad I bought it. Okay, thanks a lot.